Yeah, so we'll see. All right, we're live by all accounts. So, welcome anyone that sees this. This is Jerry O'Neill, West Awake, and I'm delighted to be talking as my first guest, Celine O'Donovan, author
Hi, Jerry.
of Gifts from the Devastation. So, Celine, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Honored to be your first guest.
I don't
I
know if
hope
I
the
don't
first of
know.
many.
I don't know. I don't know if it's an honor or not, but we'll see. So what have you been up to? I suppose a background for anyone that doesn't know. Um, I suppose I'm not sure. I'm not sure where when I first came to meet you. I know we met at Mark Atwood's lunch, but give us a bit of background as to yourself and were you a member of the Mandate Free Ireland group?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say I can't remember how long before I was a member of the Mandate Free Ireland group. When was that set up?
Oh,
It
November, maybe
wasn't.
October,
I could have been the
that
new
kind of
year.
time frame.
Yeah, could have been the new year. But I can remember how you came to. I can literally remember where I was when say our paths crossed more directly. I
Hmm.
had gone away after Christmas to a little Airbnb because I was actually doing a bit
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah.
writing and I just wanted to get away for a few days. And as I was coming back, I can remember it so vividly. I was in Nina. I stopped in Borrisokane to get petrol. And I was just sitting in the car flicking through my phone and I read your most recent. It was the one about Gay
Oh,
Byrne and
oh,
that
Joe Rogan.
particular
Yeah,
art.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, and it really just struck a chord, maybe because I'd been listening to him, I can't remember. And I think I just dropped you an email in the car, and then you dropped an email back, and then
yeah,
that's
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
how
That's it.
it,
That's right. Because I remember when you
yeah,
said you were a writer. Then, yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, I was
So,
probably slow. Yeah.
so, so give us a. You launched your book at the Saoirse Creatives.
Mhm.
How is that? How has that been going? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, beforehand or just maybe was it
Well,
since
in terms
release?
of, I'm always fascinated about the process of getting a book published, if you like.
Okay.
One of the things I remember from your presentation was that there was so many different ways to um, purchase the book. And I wondered, is that difficult, or how much of that is down to your own kind of? You have to do a lot of that yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I nearly feel I'm on a, I've published a first book. So I can just tell you very briefly, I self-published my first book, then there's this book, and then I feel I'm moving into another hybrid version through the course I've been doing with Mark Ashwood. And I knew nothing about the publishing world. I still don't claim to know an awful lot, but I learned a lot through the first book. It was interesting. I had a draft of this book written in 2017, 17,
Okay.
18, I think. Straight after cancer, really, within a few, I often say to people, you never know how you're going to get on the path. I wasn't on the path of writer at all. I just
Yeah.
knew I'd out of cancer, out of treatment, and I knew with every fiber of my being, there's no going back. There's just no going back. There isn't a life to go back to there
Yeah.
doing what I was doing. You know, I think we all know there's a point when you know you need to start moving in a different direction. But I was lost and I didn't know what to do. And I bumped into someone I hadn't seen. Everything to me always is lining you up, you know, for the next thing you're on your path. But I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in about 20 years, and they mentioned this course. I think I might have mentioned it to you, called The Artist's Way, which is sort of a getting you in touch with your creativity. It doesn't matter, you know, whether you're right or you don't. It's just for everyone. It's really important to get in touch with that aspect of yourself. And I started doing that course with a small group and we did lots of different exercises. And out of the blue, one day, the woman who was running it said to me, you know, you're talking an awful lot about what you've learned from your experience with cancer and in life. And you really, really seem to be, you know, going in a good direction. And, you know, you really seem to have found something. And why don't you write about it? Have you thought about writing? And I was like, no, never. And I just, you know, it's amazing. I don't know, I'm sure you found this yourself in your life. You know, the right people, just the right circumstances turn up. And I literally
Yeah.
left the house, went home, and something, it was like robotically almost. I just went to the laptop, opened it, and I just started typing. And it really,
Hmm.
I wasn't like I'm writing a book. It was just yeah, all this stuff needs to come out because this is, I'm speaking about it, but I now need to put it down. And it literally, it's funny, I say to people, it came out nearly in chapters, which is really odd. Like, I literally would just get a title and go, I know that's the chapter. And then I could spend a good lot of time on it. So I went through that, got a draft, didn't know what to do then again. This was about 2018, knew nothing about publishing. So I rang around a few places. I think it was Penny's bookshop told me about a woman, Margaret Tonery, out in Galway, who was running a self-publishing company that she'd set up and working mainly with women, but not exclusively. That's just how it had turned out. And maybe just to chat to her and get a bit of advice, which I did. I made an appointment with her. And I went out. This was the interesting thing. So I left the draft with her and she said, I'll give you a call when I've it read and come back out. So I did. And she said, I'm probably going to shock you a bit by what I say. I'm like, what's she going to say? And she just said, look, you can write, but would you think of writing fiction? Now that totally threw me. I was like, I wasn't even thinking of writing. Why would you suddenly direct me off to fiction?
When you sat down that first time and it kind of came straight out of you, was that your personal story that came out, or basically erupted out of you? Is that that
exactly.
kind of thing?
Yeah.
So then the fiction. So right, that's a big.
Yeah. So I mean, now I can look back now and I understand it, but it took me. I spent my time for about 2 or 3 years, even when I launched the first book, trying to explain to people because everybody assumed it was my personal story because it sort of made sense. Oh, you've come through cancer, you've written a book, and then I'm telling people I wrote fiction. So I found it even strange to be saying it, but now I can see what happened was. So she said that to me, and I was like, well, I don't know what else to do right now. I have nothing else to do, so I might as well give it a shot. I haven't a clue how to write fiction. So I left her, but again, it was the same thing. The right sort of people and things show up. So I left her house, her house. I was driving home, and all these little voices of like people started coming in my head, like saying different things. And it was that. So something maybe did want to go there. I don't know. But again, it was like I always think of it, someone unlocking something in you that maybe you're not ready, you're not able, someone else is the key to unlock it for you. So I went home and I started on that. And I sort of stayed in touch.
Have we lost Celine there for a second? Hello, Celine. Are you still there? Hello. Let's see if we can get her on the phone here. We seem to have lost Celine. Let's see if we can add her back in. Technical glitches. 1 second now. Let's see if we can get her back in. Copy to clipboard. Lost you. Can you? There you are. You're back, I hope. Add to stream. I lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. Is it my broad? No. It could be my broadband now, to be honest with you. Let me see. No, it looks good there now. Anyway, you got interrupted mid-flow there.
Just about.
I suppose.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Were you, when you started down the fiction route, had you already started down your personal story? Were you writing two books in parallel?
I had the first draft. Well, I had the draft fully, completely written before of the first book when I went to her. So I had that. I thought done and dusted. It wasn't, but it was the first draft.
When you say the first book, do you mean Gifts of?
Yeah, so this book, I'll have a copy there. This book, so I had that written.
Okay, so you're waiting for 3 or 4 years to get that published then.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, yes and no, because I'll tell you why I understand there was a delay, that why I didn't publish this first. It would have made, at the time I thought, what am I doing? But
mhm.
I can see that I wrote a first draft when I was literally just straight out of cancer. So I feel I was still processing everything. As it turned out, I ended up going back editing it in 2020 when we went into lockdown. And that,
Oh, wow.
I'd a
And
few, so that was the perfect timing.
so now let me ask you a question there. When you went back to edit it in 2020, did it affect the final output a lot, or was the first draft pretty, set in
Yeah,
stone?
yeah, it was. It was. It fleshed out. I suppose I had changed. I find if you gave me this now again, I'm sure the same as you. If you gave it to me again, I mean, I did know it was finished when it was finished at the end of 2020,
Okay.
but at the same time, I'm sure no, I don't think I would do much more with it. But when I did go back, it was interesting because I tell you why it really struck a chord. Why it was because even with the title "Gifts from the Devastation," for me, it's like that suddenly became about something bigger as well. I didn't intend it. It is my story. But it took on a new meaning because we went into this collective devastation, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So there was
yeah,
something in that. I mean, I didn't suddenly change and go, I'm talking about, something else. It wasn't. It was still very much my personal story, but I suppose it showed me how these lessons are relevant in any devastation, in anything that you
yeah.
go through, whether it's collective or if I go through something else in my life and to me, it's really interesting. Everything that I wrote about it myself, I can apply it nearly collectively. It's like the microcosm in your own world of what's going on. And but also I needed a bit of time and distance, yourself from any
Yeah, yeah,
experience.
yeah,
You're right straight away. So there was a method, there was a reason for that, which I didn't understand. And the other good thing in the time that I went and did the other book was I had to learn more about writing. It didn't just become, because this you're writing, it's very memoir. I had to get into characters and dialogue. I knew nothing about it. But I don't know, I just started. And then had a few meetings with her. She gave me a few tips along the way. And then I did a writing course with Charlie Adley. I don't know if you remember Charlie
Mm-hmm.
Adley's in the City Tribune. And
Okay.
he was running the craft of writing a course up in the West Side Resource Centre, and he had to cancel it at some stage, but he did do it, and it happened to coincide with when I think I was in the midst of writing the book. So he might have a one week it might be the theme might be dialogue, the next one might be plot, or so it gave me a little bit of extra, I suppose, reassurance, or
Mm-hmm.
because even if I had the ideas, the craft of putting that together into characters and story, so that was I suppose it was a pretty steep learning curve. Um, so I suppose on many levels it helped me. It helped me when I went back to the book. It helped me also with a bit of space and time, but also just you had asked me at the beginning about the publishing process. So I had self-published with Tribes Press, but I had to pay, which is fine. That's what they pay. But I mean, I couldn't afford to go off and self-publish a second book, and I didn't really want to in one of it because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work and
And it's a
publicity and
lot.
everything. Yeah,
Is it an expensive process?
it is. Oh, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think now knowing they would have managed the printing for me, and I think it was outsourced to somewhere in Eastern Europe. That turned out to
Mm-hmm.
be the most expensive part. That was a few grand. Other than that, the rest wasn't too expensive because I had the odd consultation with her, but I sort of managed that as I went along. I had worked in marketing for years as well, so I was quite used to sort of editing and proofreading, and I did a lot of work on college prospectuses and stuff. So I wasn't totally unfamiliar with printing and that part of
Yeah,
it, but
yeah, yeah.
I'd never written anything personally. So yeah, I mean, it was a great way. The one advantage then was, I mean, it was all still very local. So, in terms of, I know they always say it's very difficult to make a living as an author in writing alone. I mean, maybe whatever else you and maybe get into from it, but like it was still a very local situation. It was a wonderful experience and I learned a lot, but I was still going around with my own books, selling them directly, and I
Mm-hmm.
got it into a few bookshops myself. They got it into a few. I set up an online sort of my own online system for selling it. But now you could then I'm up on Amazon, so I switched from them and it's now up on Amazon. and I can order all their copies at half price, so, and then I can sell them. So that was sort of the first, but then I decided I can't afford to. What do I do the second time? So again, I had time. I came across the Artist Yearbook and Diary. I don't know if you've ever, the Artist and Writers Yearbook and Diary. It's like a big encyclopedia of publishers and agents. And I literally got it from West Side Library. And I spent about 3 months and I went through every single publisher I thought might be a fit. And then I made a submission. They all want you to make a submission. And it has to be quite, you can get the sort of a bulk of a submission, but you've got to tailor it because they all need different things. And then eventually, when I'd nearly given up hope, I got a lot of responses, and some were so I did eventually get one yes from, they're sort of an independent online publisher, but the big advantage is I didn't have to pay and I don't have to contribute. So basically I submitted it to them. They didn't do much editing, to be fair, or proofreading. I did most of that, and then they're printing and they're distributing it, so it's available, the usual Amazon book depository. But they're organizing quite a few interviews for me now with different podcasts and shows that may be relevant. But still, there's very little in that for me in terms of selling it, because yourself, you go to a publisher, and I'm not putting it down. I've got a really nice, but that's what led me then. As we were talking about, I'm doing the course, the Financial Sovereignty course with Mark Atwood, and that's really about helping anyone, not just writing. Take whatever it is that you have a passion for, and how do you find your audience, and how do you connect with them, and how do you sell direct? How do you become sovereign in that sense, that you're not going to go?
Very important.
So I'm in sort of a bit of a hybrid version, because I had the publisher and the book go ahead when I started the course. So my first foray now into doing something direct is, I said, what could I do? And Mark shows us, okay, it's all the add-ons you do as well. So the audiobook has evolved out of that. And I have recorded the audiobook myself. I have set up my own, if you want to call it a one-page website, nearly like a sales page, through a system he uses. So and then I'm looking at how I generate traffic to it. So I know it might appear complicated, but it isn't really. There's 2 pages, one if you want the audiobook, one if you want to go buy the print or ebook.
And you own the rights to the audiobook, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least on that end of it is from a financial and sovereignty perspective, that's
Oh, it is. And I mean, and I can take, like, what's really interesting then, just for anyone, if you don't know, I'd never come across this website called Fiverr, FFI. Yeah. And I just thought, I didn't have to, but I just thought, I had looked at it and I'd edited it, and I said, I'm going to just put a request out. And I asked a few people there and I sent them a sample. I just put it up. Can you give me an assessment of this in terms of an audiobook? And if I did want to put it on Audible, in terms of the quality. And I got really sound people back to me. And I've ended up working with one guy for about €60 to master the whole book. And he's going to deliver it back to me this week.
Yeah, it's good.
Tomorrow, I think, so that's been a big learning. And I really like this. There's a nicer feeling to moving. It's funny. I mean, it's still early days, but there's a nicer feeling, I have to say, moving into that more sovereign space of how do I use this now, and how do I sell it, and what sort of relationships, it sort of puts you into, you have to start then going, okay, because it is about getting out there and talking about it, and
absolutely, and
isn't it, relationships?
Yeah, it's all about relationships, like, really. That's one of the things that, with this and with anything we're doing, especially with sovereignty now going into the future, is that I think we all need to be kind of a bit independent and kind of have, several such, maybe more than one stream of income available to you, whether it's writing, whatever it might be. And so from that point of view, how would you take it going forward then, Celine, if you were, you've 2 books now, and I'm sure you have, thoughts of a third, or maybe you don't, I don't know. But
I'd always be, go on,
No, no, I was just going to say, are you working on something at the moment?
Not. I had a draft. You see, as part of the course as well. Um, Mark had us. So in terms of developing your whole process, the whole it revolves around generating, getting a mailing list, developing your own, creating your own was audience, your channel to reach them. So as part of that, you develop a little freebie that you give someone away, a little written piece if someone
Yeah.
got on the mailing list. And then we developed that into writing an ebook. So for anyone who had not written anything, your first maybe product would be an information product. Now it could be I'm a healer, I'm a whatever. It doesn't have to be you're a writer, but you develop some sort of an information product that you then sell through this system that we have, and you have an audio version, and you might develop a course out of it. So there's a lot of what would I say? Could have a lot of legs to this. It's not just you start off with one.
Gotcha.
So maybe you want to do one-on-one consultations with people. Maybe it's a course that you record, like the course that we're doing with Mark, and then that live recording becomes a course you sell to people. Or there's lots of different options. So as part of that, I did start working. That's where I was at Christmas. I said, I'm going to see, can I get down something really fast that I could be some sort of an add-on to this book. I haven't gone near it since I haven't had time, but I did write a draft, and it was about getting how you connect in with your own, I suppose, superpowers, I call them, but your powers of, creating your life and all of those that help you move into sovereignty. So I have a draft of that the idea was you would sell it as an ebook and an audiobook. Now, there's nothing to stop you going printing it, but I don't know where the whole publishing world is going. Like, I feel I'll always be writing, maybe like you. I don't know where's next, but there's always has to be nearly a little project sort of.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that too.
Yeah, I can't just go no. I mean, I need it as an outlet. It's very interesting. I didn't realize it, and it only starts. All the different pieces as time evolves, it moves on. It's just different things. I feel I'm learning about it, but I remember, and I talked about it because it was just quite important to me. I remember as a child being very talkative, and then I remember going very quiet. And I think I went like literally boom, and sort of very shut down a lot of my life. People might
was that an adolescent thing, or was there? It was
a very young age. I remember being about 6 or 7 and literally not being able to stop talking, like blah, 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 and never happier. It was like there was just this flood of information. I can remember one of my happiest days was walking up to the.
Oh my God! Don't tell me this stream is gone again. Is that my internet or yours, Celine? We're going to have to sort this out. I'll just have to remove you and add you back in, Celine. And sorry now, folks. All 5 of you that are there. Oh, there's 2 comments there. Private chat. Can't wait to read your book. No, I'm just going to have to text Celine again and edit all this when we're done. And dropped off again there. There we go. Add to stream. I don't know what's going on there, Celine. I'll be able to edit this afterwards, but
okay. No, I've good internet here, so it's really strange. And then when I went back in, it said cannot read. I don't know, unless there's been a few glitchy things in our neighborhood, but
it might be the streaming service I'm using. Like the streaming service is online, so I don't know if it's something to do with that or not. But
okay,
anyway,
you can edit it a bit. Okay, a bit disjointed, but.
I think I can. I'll be able to edit it once I can take this down. But anyway, you got cut off midstream once again. Sorry about that.
Once again, no worries. That's the story of my life.
So, what was the what's the since publications are publication is what's the official publication?
Well, the official publication is next Friday, the 25th of March.
Okay, so what does that entail for you?
It
in
doesn't
terms of,
really.
is there a launch somewhere? Is there?
No, there won't be. You see, that's why I suppose it was great to do it in a sense, do something down in Doolin. Maybe I'll do something else in time, like a signing. I'm not sure because basically the publishers are in the UK, so it's sort of like an online publisher. So they officially then will, let's say, send it out, and
Mm-hmm.
it's anyone who's ordered it. Now, as it turns out, they had scheduled a good few interviews for me, so I'm doing a few next week. I'm also going on Mark's show as well on Wednesday morning. So I've about 6 interviews next week, and I think a lot of it will be that because you see, it's not stocked in bookshops in Ireland as yet. That would be it is stocked in other.
And how many copies of a book like that would they print in an
They
initial
will just
print
go
run?
initially. It's only a very small. Like they will give me about 6 hours. They give me about 6 hours of free PR up until you sell 500 books. You sell over 500 books, you'll get another 6 hours.
Okay.
But they really encourage that you. And I know that. I see it as a lifelong thing. I wasn't going to get myself too stressed because it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
said it isn't. It's very easy have a big hurrah launch a book. I did a big enough thing the last time, sold a load of books at the time, and then it sort of dwindles out. So unless you sort of, I
Mm-hmm.
don't see this because it's more a personal story, and I feel the other book like even down in Doolin, I sold a few of the other book as well. So I sort of feel they
Mm-hmm.
go together. You don't just
Yeah, yeah,
write a
yeah.
book and go, okay, launch is over, book is done. So I
Mm-hmm.
see it more as a lifelong project, and it'll probably a lot of other stuff might come out of it. Because
Yeah,
there's a lot of little
absolutely.
practical tools in it as well that I could
Mm-hmm.
develop. So yeah, like I contacted Midwest FM Radio. I'm doing an interview there next week. They were really good on the first book as well. And a couple of bookshops there will stock it. But I mean, it's up to me individually because what the publishers will say, their rep, it's in the sort of mind, body, spirit category. And if you're not a well-known author, and if you're not one of the big publishers, you're not going to get the big space in the bookshops.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do, you make a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of money from
Mm-hmm.
doing it. So it's
Well,
nice to
that's
do it. It's
yeah.
nice to have a little presence in Galway and in a few places. But like Castle Bookshop, just as an example, I contacted them because I'm going on Midwest FM. They're stocking it and they're putting it on their website, mayobooks.ie. But I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
can't necessarily spend my time going around to every single bookshop in Ireland. And I'd love the idea. I must say, I do like the idea of going around to different towns and maybe going into it. Like, I know someone in Tipperary who said, maybe you might come down to our writing group and then maybe into a cancer support centre and maybe into a bookshop.
Yeah.
That,
Actually, that's probably a great idea. Like
yeah,
um if you could frame a tour around it or something like that, but
yeah,
especially cancer support groups because they'd probably
yeah,
find like that would be I'd imagine that would give a lot of hope to a lot of people, especially in those groups.
yeah. I hope so. And I mean, I really feel it. Cancer is the story for me, but I don't know how, for some reason it's not like the main. I don't see it as
Hmm.
it's not like a lot of, let's say, I'm not going to be putting down cancer books, but it isn't
Yeah,
like how you get through it and this is what you eat and this is what you do. And, there's an element of it, but it's a much bigger, I call it really more a story of my own awakening to who I am and my sovereignty and my freedom and my power and my creativity. That's really what it's about. And cancer just happens to be my big breakdown, if you want to call it that,
hmm,
got me. Everybody has something. I'm sure everybody
yeah,
has. Everybody has.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody who was on that weekend, because obviously there's something awakening in them or has, something triggered it. And it's usually something difficult. Unfortunately, that's what happens,
Absolutely.
isn't
And yeah,
it?
no, absolutely. And I was very struck by the woman, the first woman that spoke after the first presentation down in Doolin, and the the breakdown in the relationship between her and her brother over COVID, over
Oh, yeah.
vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
struck me like it was the hurt, the real hurt, not like it wasn't even anger, it was just like hurt. And you could
Yeah.
feel it in the room. and I was surprised by it, but it was a curious weekend to me in terms of Sunday was like, Jesus, I was crying Sunday at one point. It was like the O'Hanlon woman and the names are gone for me.
Was it the lady later in the day? No,
yeah, the lady and the younger guy. No, Celine O'Hanlon. Sorry, O'Hanlon. I can't think of her first. I should know her.
Not Lanny O'Hanlon, you said?
Lanny O'Hanlon. Jesus Christ, I've been talking
Playwright,
to her.
is it? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lanny O'Hanlon and her poetry and the guy's music. There was just that.
Yeah.
Maybe you weren't there for it.
No,
but
I wasn't there.
absolutely.
And I saw Oliver O'Connell. I thought was just beautiful. That was so moving. Oh my God, that was so moving. So moving.
Yeah. It was kind of unexpected because the Lanny O'Hanlon was on just before Oliver, and that segment together, it was like, I just felt like people. It was kind of sad, but it was also kind of healing, and you could feel that there was everybody in the room had, like you're saying, had something they were trying to process. But it was it was
great power in it. I like, were you happy with it and how it went? I mean,
I was relieved. I was relieved of it. I wasn't. Somebody said to me, my brother or someone said, you must be proud of yourself. And I was like, no, I'm not proud. I was like relieved. Relief was the big thing, because you just don't know how much, when you look back, you think of all the things that could have gone wrong that you just didn't think of, in advance. It was like, oh, I never thought of that, but it worked out. So I was just relieved. It was, again, you don't know how a crowd of people, like 100, I think there was 150 over the weekend between both, coming and going in both places. You never know how they're going to react, but it was like, I don't think we had any, there was no awkward, there didn't seem to be anyway, to anyone I met, there didn't seem to be any awkwardness or kind of,
I think this is part of the future. This is really what we're seeing. People talk about new earth or new community or new way of living, and this is what we're talking about are the systems we're in, and then how we want to live. I mean, I find once you connect with people who have a similar outlook in terms of where they want, how they want to live life, it was like that day we had the lunch, and it's the same in the course. There's literally, you just come together, and there's this like instant recognition, and it's like you know each other forever. And like, I felt like everybody I met, there was no putting up a barrier or there's this period of getting to know them, because you've just gone beyond it, because by being there, we know at a very deep level, there's some deep calling in all of us to be free and and live in a way that's you're very, like, I just think of the human spirit and its desire to be free and to express itself. That really came with, that was the weekend, really, wasn't it? That was the whole. It
was definitely. There was definitely that, and there was definitely. It makes you think, like, I suppose when you're trying to process afterwards what it means, or does it mean, maybe it doesn't mean anything, is kind of thing. But you're kind of thinking is that, I think the best, and the side of the fence I'm sitting on at the moment and everything that's going on, is that I think I just need to disengage with people, like not in a nasty way, but like just to disengage with elements of society I just don't need to be involved with. And you think you do need to be involved with, but actually you don't. You just don't. And life is much more kind of peaceful for me anyway.
Oh, the same. And I would have experienced it a few years ago, even after cancer, but I got very good advice even going through this, because yes, we all got it's only natural, you go through different stages, and anger and disbelief and this and that, and then, but the one thing that I kept getting the message recently from people and from the weekend is, what is it what is it you want to do or see or be in the world? You have the power. This is this is the whole point of sovereignty. We are the ones
Hmm.
who create it. So you
Yeah.
can't, I'm exactly there. I'm very, I wouldn't say insular, but I'm more plugged into myself than the outer world. I'm not at
Hmm.
all plugged into the outer world at all right now, because I go, that's a distraction for me in terms of what I want to create in my life. Like I can't create
Hmm.
from that place. It just brings you into fear and it lowers your energy. So it's not about being, it's not happening. I know well it's happening, but it's like
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
real? What's real and what do you
Yeah.
want to be real? What do you want to be real? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And
the
that's
way that what you give your attention to grows, and I really believe that. And I found
oh,
I've been quite content in the last, ups and downs, but if I stay focused on
yeah.
myself and what feels good, like you're writing, getting out in nature, whatever it is for you. Um,
Hmm.
isn't it? It's,
And no, because I found, yeah, I agree with you. Because I found your group when I went to that lunch, like an interloper, like to Mark's lunch, is that group of people were very much in tune with all of the people I was meeting through in Galway,
yes, yes,
through Mandate
yeah.
Ireland and that kind of stuff. They're all very kind of. It was just you felt there was no hidden agendas, or you weren't censoring yourself for X, Y, and Z. But do you have? How do you like in your day to day life? What kind of networks of people do you involve yourself with, or get kind of creative? Maybe not ideas, but inspiration from. Do you know?
I don't generally get it from, I don't get it generally from other people. I find I did when I was writing the first book. I find I've a lot of look. We all have these online groups, and I'm in a few. I'm in Mark's group, and we've a lot of different
Yeah.
meetings. I'm in another little group on a Thursday night. It's more sort of a spiritual type of creative group, but it's lovely. It's just a very gentle sort of group. I wouldn't be in an awful lot. I got into a lot of groups at the beginning, and it just began to get a bit overwhelming. And then I've been going down cul-de-sacs I didn't want to go down. I find I need a lot of quiet and space like that. That's I can't. It's like that voice. I can't hear that voice if there's noise. If I'm in, it's sort of funny. Like if I'm around and talking, which I used to be an awful lot, I can't hear anything that's coming through, and I start to get really frustrated. Going,
Hmm.
oh, there's something beginning to nudge at me there, and I can't. So I need an awful lot of. I didn't realize that I need a lot of I sort of very fluid type of life. I just need a lot of quiet and a lot of and then I like
My God, here we go again. Jesus Christ. Mm, 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 dee, dee, dee. Hello. Hello. It's back to me. Dee, 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 dee. I have to sort this out before the next one. Add to stream. Remove. Add. Remove. Nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
back again. Oh my god.
This is driving me nuts now.
I think
Seems to
this
be.
is must be StreamYard. I really don't think the internet here is that bad.
No, no, I don't think it's the internet
Yeah,
here either. It's
yeah.
the streaming site. Um,
It should be. And it's
the
meant to be quite good, I thought.
it is well. I don't know if you're supposed to maybe download something, but this is what they've given me. But I'll have to figure it out to
Mm,
going forward.
yeah, but
See there
yeah.
now.
You
So
were you were just saying about
you're a
groups
mid
and
sentence again. What were you
sorry,
saying?
no, you were just saying
Yeah,
about
yeah.
groups and people. I mean, it's not. I don't want to sound like I'm a total loner. I'm not. Like it's funny. I tell you what, I found this is an interesting thing. Probably before I got sick, I probably so much going on in my life and so many people, and a lot of them weren't necessarily, I won't say a lot of them, no disrespect to anyone, but I filled up my time all the time meeting people, and I didn't have great boundaries in my life, and I ended up a lot very drained and often not necessarily always in the best company for me. So I've become very, and I've learned that a lot. You got to be very careful where you give your energy, because
Well, who you give your attention to,
yeah,
like that's one of the
exactly,
big things you
exactly,
learn. Kind of,
yeah,
you waste so much of your time with people, and sometimes you're like I always say, like sometimes you're the wrong person for another person, but
yeah,
like
oh
often
yeah,
and vice versa. But like
yeah.
you do waste.
But that isn't that the yeah. Sorry, yeah.
The one thing I learned through COVID is the amount of superfluous people that are in your like. I don't mean in the too
I
bad a
know,
way, but I mean it's like
I know.
there's a lot of superfluous kind of people that you give an inordinate amount of time to
Yeah,
pre-COVID, and just
yeah.
and I think that stripped a lot out I stripped a lot of that out during COVID. I don't know about you.
Yeah, yeah. I think I did it after cancer, I think, and I didn't have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
energy. I was nearly forced to do it, in a funny way, because I just had no sense of being able to say no, or this
Hmm.
isn't right for me. Not being critical, like you said. What I like now is this, and I found it in all of these new communities. There's no, what would I say? There's no dragging out of people. Everybody just wants everybody. So it's like a little tapestry. Everybody's weaving in and out, and you meet the right person. You might have a chat for a while, and you help each other, and then they might go on and do something else, and you might go on, and it's
Yeah.
constantly moving rather than, oh, you said you're my friend, now you have to be here all the time. I don't know. I don't. I find it very difficult to work within those sort of restrictions or confines, and I wouldn't expect
No,
someone
big
else.
time.
And I don't want someone else to do that either. I would like it to be a very free flowing, depending on everybody where you're at and what's going on. And I think that's what we're moving into. I think that's what all of these groups, like I felt. That's why I really felt very at home, both down in Doolin and in that lunch and in the group with Mark. There is no, that's a very sovereign way to be, we're not
Yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah.
at other people. You know what I mean? Because I'm really learning now. Every time I say to myself, should you be out in the world doing something? And I'm finding everything that's gone out in the world, I'm living through it in a little microwave, as are we all, whether it's through our families or our relationships. And, you're dealing with, it might sound crazy, but I feel sometimes unless you can master the issues in your own life, you
Hmm.
know, forget
I
what
know
are you going to
exactly.
do out in the world if you can't
Yeah, yeah.
if you can't
But
navigate your own life personally.
absolutely. I exactly. And we all, and
Yeah.
believe me, we all have stuff, more things to ask for the most. Um,
Yeah.
and
Can I say one thing? Sorry. Yeah, go on.
yeah, yeah, go on, go ahead.
No, no, it always keeps coming to me recently, when you, particularly in the whole topic of freedom, and it's also, well, what is freedom, and different things to different people. And I always look at it firstly from the place of personal freedom, within yourself, as opposed to out there. But
Yes.
the biggest, if I was to say to anyone, the biggest key I have found to finding that, you go, well, how do you find it, and how do you, is you've got to clear all your own trauma and baggage and emotions that have basically, for all of us, been trapped in us all our lives, whether it's someone shouted at you when you were a child, and you then, as a result of that, you avoided certain things. But these build that, well, I did in my life, suppress, suppress, suppress. And then you become very powerless. You cannot be sovereign, because you can't go within. So you have to you're looking outside. It's like going to the doctor, and the doctor, I always think this is so interesting. Like, even if you look at the medical system, I'm not saying there's some very good doctors, but in most cases, you're going around on a conveyor belt. So you're always treating the symptom. You're never getting to the root, which is, you need to clear this trauma out and feel it and get help. And once you do that, you're free. And I think there's an investment in all of these systems in keeping us in that loop of never really clearing that, because I found out I'm not afraid of anything or anyone
Yeah,
anymore,
yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm not saying I've cleared it, but I've cleared pretty much everything that you probably could have come at me with, where I had a big wound or a big, most of that's gone. And it's the only way. I think that's how then that led me to being able to settle inside quietly. I couldn't sit with myself most of my life. I could then go into the quiet and sit with myself, and my mind wasn't crazy. And then I started to hear, and I'd get a little bit of inspiration and intuition, and creativity started to come through. But it had to start, if you're an absolute mess inside of all this, old stuff just stuck. It's geez,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My life was just running from it, running everything.
Yeah, yeah. I'd agree with a lot of what you're saying there. And this, like, I do think a lot of people are looking for outside validation, and it's quite a journey to, a lot of this, like, there's a lot of the spiritual health and wellness people that I've met in the various groups over the last year, that I'm like, I could spend hours talking to them, like going on, delving into that journey, because I think it's one side of myself that I've kind of neglected most of my life. And it's kind of, I started to waking up to it maybe in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's, the one thing about, because I think I'm similar to you in that I like plenty of alone, maybe I'm misphrasing this, but plenty of alone time to create, when I'm writing and stuff. But I do find myself getting stale quickly if I'm not getting, and it's just by virtue of this, I'm kind of writing on different things all the time.
Yeah.
It's just different perspective. I nearly having a conversation with somebody nearly always gives me a different perspective on something I'm trying to figure out in my head. Like, but I veer towards the isolation much more than the, like, organizing that event and doing and stuff like that. I need to push myself to do that. Once I've made the decision, I'll do it, and it's great, and I'm glad I've done it. But I kind of always need those little, nearly projects to keep, push myself out there, because but what I was going to move on to then is, in terms of what your thoughts are on, in terms of the sovereignty and the people you've met. What are your thoughts on what's coming down the track in terms of our own, whether it's your personal sovereignty, or national sovereignty, or stuff that, worries you, or things that you think are positive that are happening? Or do you kind of think about those things?
I do. I suppose I always bring it back. I don't know. For me, I always bring it back to personal first. I sometimes find it hard to it's not saying it's abstract in that sense. I sort of feel that it has to start with each of us. If each of us start finding that in ourselves, it almost becomes the next step that the country and communities happen. Like, if we start out there, if you're not doing it in your own life, like, even for me, just to give you an example of saying, and it happened after cancer, like, I knew, even at that stage, I didn't even know what the word sovereignty was, but something inside of me was calling for it, because everybody in my life would have assumed, and did, I was going back. I had a permanent pensionable job, and I did not know what was ahead, but I just knew I will die before I will do that. I literally will. I have to find a way of being me in the world in my own way. That's not harming anyone else. That's hopefully contributing to society. But I'm using that power, like it's a very, that creative power to create that life. So I feel by me doing my best to find this in my life, then I'm naturally I just find it. I'm naturally connecting with similar people, like we did through the Saoirse group, which I know is going to grow. Like, I'm going to go along on Sunday morning. I know that's one of the get-togethers, and I feel we're moving into another stage of creation. So,
well, I hope, I do think that as well, and I do hope, and I suppose the thing for me is I kind of feel I need to. The personal part of it is that I kind of feel I need to participate in the creation, even if it's one small community, even if it's only 5 people or 6 people or 8 people, because I do think the answer lies in the kind of maybe new or alternative kind of networking of people that are, I know exactly where you're coming from on that one.
And I can't, it's funny. I think sometimes as well, I would have always jumped ahead. I think we've got to trust that if you're just in, none of us know, like, whatever anyone predicts, none of us really know what's coming. But I am really optimistic. I know
Yeah, I am too.
good. I have no fear. I mean, every time I don't even go near looking at that, I just keep saying to myself, that's the movie that is to play out. It's just the end of the movie. There's no point.
Yeah.
What are you watching the old for? Why are you
Yeah.
watching the old that's collapsing? You need to be, and I know sometimes someone I was talking to was getting a bit frustrated as well. I'm like, what should we be creating? What should we be doing? And I don't think everything's so fluid. I think just by, coming together and the energy that was created even down in Doolin, I wouldn't underestimate what that is even just is, what the seeds that have been sown and how people have gone away and how I've even had a few people email me, all these little different connections. So, and I think when the time is right, there's different.
Yeah, you can't force it. Exactly.
No,
that's the thing is you can't force it.
Yeah. And I think we know if you're living in a very sovereign way, you're very in touch with your intuition, you're very clear, you're very, you're not looking to the outer world for the next sign. Like I knew it with my books and I knew I was looked after every step of the way and I hadn't a clue what was coming next. If someone said, what do you do next week with it? I was like, I have no idea. But I was always very focused that I'm going to get this done. I knew it and I knew things would show up. So, even just like that coming together, I think there was so much trauma and so much, as we can see in the world, being exposed right now. I think, yes, it's not a time to be racing into creating like that. We have to honor each stage in a weird way. We can still be making the connections and the friendships. And I think it's much easier now. I don't think you're going to have, it's not going to be like years ago. Like everything's happening very quickly because they said the energies are speeding up and however it works. And I've literally had people, I'll give you just an interesting example of this is mad, but how fast you think about something and suddenly it's nearly happening. Within our group that I'm doing the course with Mark, so we all have our own little YouTube channel we're trying to develop as a way of sort of connecting with our own audience. And we sort of support each other's videos to help each other build traffic. So I was watching one of them, an Australian woman who does interviews with different people of interest. So I got to sit and watch one of them the other night, and it turned out this woman started talking. I was just engrossed from the first second. I couldn't take my eyes off. And then she proceeded to say she was from Ireland, now living, but she didn't really have a very Irish accent. Very colourful. I think she's an artist, but she ended up very young, leaving Dublin. She had a son, boy, young. He's 21 now, and she was very young. I think she's a single mother. Went to Edinburgh, studied art. This is that interesting. So I'm listening to her, and she's just really fascinating. She does some sort of transpersonal art therapy or something now. Anyway, so she goes on to say how the woman who was interviewing her, they both had come together through a course they were doing online.
Oh my God. Add to stream. Remove, looks like.
Oh, mid-sentence.
I'm gonna kill this fucking thing.
Hopefully nobody's watching it because they're very frustrated.
I think no. I'll have to wedge this together now afterwards. Continue there with that lady.
I won't go too long, but it's just interesting. There's an interesting connection because she said then the woman asked her, how did you end up in Australia? So she told her how she was from Dublin, went to Edinburgh with her son. Then one weekend she came back on holidays to Ireland. And where did she decide to go? But Doolin. And she was in Doolin and Clare. This is so funny. Like I'm just watching it the week after. And she walks in. Yeah. So she walks into a hostel in Doolin. I think it was one of the ones I dropped someone to stay in. I can't remember. Is it the Alwi? Is it the Oh my God, what's the name?
No, it's okay. Go on.
Anyway, she went into this hostel and she said she went in the door and there was a man standing there and he had no shoes on. Some Irish fella. And anyways, they sort of got talking. And they seemed to have a bit of a connection. And I don't know, did they meet again the next day? Then she went back to Edinburgh, and they sort of kept in touch, and they've ended up married. And
Oh, right.
yeah, so they moved to Australia. So she finished, she was sort of talking through the little chat, and she said, you know what? She was talking about how much she loved Doolin and the west of Ireland, and she was heading back for her anniversary this April, May to celebrate it in Doolin. So
Wow.
I just thought this is hilarious. So I just put a message up. I said, love the interview. And you wouldn't believe I was down. I said at the weekend in Doolin recently, launched my book there. And I said, the Saoirse created. And then
Yeah.
the next day, I noticed someone had joined my mailing list. I said, that looks to be her. And then I got an email from her the next day saying, I feel like we're already in this. Not, I'm sorry, I'm just talking about the speed and the connection of people when you're connecting from a very deep place. So she literally, the next day, I got an email saying, just feel like we already nearly know each other and want to continue the conversation. And she quoted me a little poem she'd written about life. And she said, I'm going to be in Doolin in April, May, and if you'd like to continue the chat over a coffee,
wow.
I'd love to meet you. And I said, I'd love that. So, you know,
It's mad, isn't it?
it's an instant knowing with people. I think you're connecting from the heart. I'm not saying other people aren't.
It must be an energy thing. It must be like there must be some sort of an energy thing.
Yeah. Well, it's coming from a more heart place, I feel. You know, it's not like in your head going, okay, I need to meet this person to network so I can develop my business. It's not. It's people who are coming from a very, very pure place of wanting. It's coming from a very, like the spirit. You're.
If you can put yourself in that position, you probably receive the signals you want from other people that are in the same space.
Because it's all energy. So they said whatever vibration you're at, you're going to be matched with that. So if you're living in fear, you're probably going to be matched with more fear and fearful people. And I've noticed that that's disappeared from my life. I've very little of that because it just doesn't interest me. And I've noticed certain people, you know, that you could be living down the road from and you would have seen all the time and suddenly they disappear. I'm like, where did they go? They still live there, but I never see them, you know? And it's like being in different realities, and it is a different reality.
But you are in different realities. That's the reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're experiencing like what I find I find it very funny. I have this with my mother, like I'm living in the same house as her and she's wonderful, but we're definitely in different realities, and she'll be listening to the news downstairs and I'm upstairs in my own world, and I'll come down and there's this sort of what's going on, not able to relate, but at the same time I can see in another way she can be lifted by, because you know, if you give all your energy to what's very fearful and negative, you know, it's gonna bring you down, and you're
just gonna attract it.
Yeah, you attract it. Exactly.
It's funny because I see it. There's a couple of politicians local politicians that you know when you're kind of observing people's behavior online, and not that mine is the best, but you can definitely see people that they get an energy from negative energy. They like attract it, but they also seem to get, I know what that is. They feed from it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. That's so interesting, Jerry. Yeah, because I was listening to someone on that very point yesterday, and they described how we have lived in systems. How did they describe where they're basically are siphoning off? It's like a narcissist and an abuser. So this is where I was very interested when they were talking about you have to master in your own life before basically what's happening in the collective is sort of making its way down into human relationships. So those people who are very disconnected from themselves have no access to sort of creative power, any sort of power. So like you said, exactly, it's a vampire. You often talk about energy vampires. It's almost they're siphoning off your energy. And I know, because I was in a relationship once with someone like that, and literally the more annoyed you got, you could see the happier they got because they were getting energy. Your agitation is energy.
It's giving them energy.
They've no other way to get it. Yeah.
And it's like they don't, well, yeah, because I noticed one.
Wow, it's so interesting. Sorry, you say that. Yeah.
Because you wonder, do they actually know that about themselves? Or
I've asked people, because I know a few people like that,
I know,
You
like
know what
I
they
know.
say? What happens sometimes to individuals like that often is something happens when they're young. I don't say this is the
Mm,
case with everyone, like
yeah,
a
yeah,
bit of
yeah.
trauma. And what they do is they basically split themselves off from the real person with all the pain, and they create this sort of false persona. But that false persona has no access to,
Yeah,
their
I
true
get you.
power. So they have to then buy. This is where that abusive type of mind, head wrecking stuff,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah, yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like all the systems are that we're in currently are relying on it. Like if you think they cannot control us unless we're in fear, so they keep you sort of in trauma, and that's how they control you. It's like this mind control, um, and they're taking our basically if they like what we talked about. Where do you put your focus? So if they put all this fear on the news and we're all looking at it, that energy feeds them. So we help them create that because we're giving it our attention. So
Do you
it
feel?
gives that story energy. Whereas if we all
Yeah,
didn't even look at that story, we
I feel they're having to create more and more
yeah, yeah,
um
yeah,
different types of scenarios because I don't think it's working as well. I think it's losing its power
yeah,
over time. Even, even people that I don't like, most people will say from the COVID vaccine, all that stuff. Even most of the people that don't agree with me on that are still in my life, mostly family.
mm,
It's not a issue anymore, like in
mm,
terms of a day-to-day issue as to rights or wrongs. It's like
mm,
it's not something they're afraid of either. Like,
mm,
take out old people out of this equation now, but it's not something they're afraid of. And I think I think this cycle of constantly kind of trying to generate fear is an indicator that they need something new, and they're constantly needing something new, and it each time it makes even less sense. It's easier
mm,
to pick apart, like, especially with what stuff that's going on at the moment now. But like, I don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's where I am hopeful because I believe it's sort of the dying cries, like they're just flailing around, like going, "Oh
Yeah,
my God,
yeah.
what else can we do?" And I
Mm,
think my sense, I don't know why I feel this is nearly they're on so depends how you view this, but it's nearly like they're being allowed to go so far that they basically give them enough rope to hang themselves rather than someone come in and go, look it, they're telling lies and people won't
mm.
believe it. Let
Yeah,
it
I don't
play
even.
out.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
I
know.
I,
I
I
feel
totally
it just
agree.
nearly needs to play out and to the point where it'll just be people will be
It's
like, what?
exactly.
What? This
It's
is crazy.
yeah, because
What'll it be next?
I kind of feel the same way. I kind of like
Mm,
I'd be like I like let it. It's going to play
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Just don't get too invested in anything. I like don't get too invested in anything that you're supposed to be
yeah.
afraid of at the moment, and
No, no, no,
live your
no.
life
And
a bit.
anyone telling you you have to be afraid. I mean, I don't do fear. I had enough of it in my life, and I faced what I thought
Yeah,
was the worst fear. So nobody can scare
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I'll happily. I have no fear of death or any of that. So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's where I think when you talk about the sovereignty and how and in I know there are certain things that maybe we do need to take action on, and we all have a different role to play. I think that's where I got a little bit confused at the beginning when I should be doing this and I should be involved with this group and I should be. But I think you've got to go with where you're naturally drawn because your natural skills and talents will be, some people are maybe
yeah.
going to play. They say the power of the light over the dark. It just takes one person who's in the light, like
Mm-hmm.
as in not living in
Mm.
fear, and can impact. It's like walking into a room and you have 100 people in
Yeah,
fear and one person not. Well, they will be much brighter than all of the people
yeah.
who are. "Oh." So, I think
Yeah.
there was a lot of light created down in Doolin. It's a light-filled place anyways, but I'd say,
And I think that's where the power I think
mm,
that's where the power lies.
mm,
Because I know I was similar to you. I was kind of thinking that I should be more involved in protesting, or I should be more involved in organizing protests. And I'm thinking that's not my skill. Like, I'm not any. It's not my net. I don't think it's healthy for me particularly to
yeah,
be getting too agitated or worked up about things because it's just not my.
mm,
I, I can spiral off down
mm,
that road and
mm,
find it hard to get off it.
Yeah.
and I'm not particularly good at it either. So
Mm.
that's the thing
Mm.
for I think that's why I'm kind of drawn to the like see the creative
Mm.
people
Mm.
and people that mind is that I think you know
It's a sort of
positive
yeah. And it's a softer, isn't it? I find I need that. It's a sort of a gentler type of I need that to be around that sort of energy. I like that. And I did go to one or two rallies in Dublin, but I'm not the person. And I remember when I started to feel myself getting really stressed and really, I can remember one day studying something. I can't remember what it was at the time in 2020. And I spent the day and I was writing notes and I had notebooks filled and I needed to
mm-hmm.
be knowledge on, I need to know everything about this. And I was so stressed. And then, if I meet someone, I'll say this if they say this, and I had to just go, no,
Yeah.
this
No,
isn't,
that's
this isn't
why.
naturally me. This isn't who, this, I think that is just to return. There's no right or wrong. It's where you feel if it's feeling off and if it's feeling stressful to you and it's not feeling good, it's not,
No, just and
not to be
it's
doing.
yeah, no, and
And you
because
turn
that
people off, don't you? Like I really believe now, and I can't say I was great at this at the beginning. I hopefully am better at that, and I think this came across in Doolin as well. Is that the only way through this is unity and love. It's not about separation because
yeah,
what everybody's trying to do is separate us. What we're doing is saying no. You can be different to me, and whether
mm-hmm.
you're not even about just whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, anything. It doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, it's
Yeah,
about because otherwise we're just the same as the other, as the other side or whatever. We're just doing the same thing. So,
yeah, no,
and I
absolutely,
found
because like
myself getting into that separation. I said, no, 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 but this isn't where I want to go. I know that's not where how I want to live. I see myself living in some sort of community that's very diverse and very open and creative
mm-hmm.
and free and supportive and all of that. Not And we
No,
will, because it's very powerful. I think that'll happen much easier. It won't be the work that we think it is. Well, it'll be work,
I don't
but
think
it'll be
it's I don't think
enjoyable
it'll
work.
be yeah, exactly. It won't be.
Yeah.
It's supporting people and stuff that they're doing. Like I think I can
Mm.
do a lot more of that than I do at the moment. And at the end of the day, especially when you're a writer, nobody can. I don't care what they stop you from doing. They can't. Nobody can stop you from thinking freely.
No,
Unless you're
exactly.
under medication.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
from our
Yeah.
point of view, if you're writing, is as long as you can think freely and put the words on a page, and even if nobody reads them, at least I can do that. Like from my point
Yeah.
of view, is nobody's ever going to be able to stop me to do that. Maybe I won't be able to do it on Substack. I might have to go somewhere else. Maybe I'll have to put it on, scroll it into a wall, but I'll be able to do it. Like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
To be able to express yourself. Yeah.
yeah, so I do. I don't. I'm kind of like that. I don't really worry. I don't really worry about it anymore.
No.
But I do think there are people. I do like there. I think there's plenty of enjoyment. Like I get plenty of enjoyment from watching people. Different people that I even just incidentally have met that weekend was to see if some way you can help what they're doing, and like it's an enjoyable experience. Like for me now to go down to Fecal in the 6th of April to see Aidan Killian and support that. Well, that's no hardship. That's just kind of joy,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, isn't there? There's something because it's been bred into us since we grew up. Compete, compete, compete. Because that's more
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
separation. And I was
yeah.
never born for that. I never was comfortable in it. It nearly killed me. And my first experience of being in a group that was supportive and more collaborative and nearly blew my mind was after
Mm-hmm.
cancer when I went to the Artist Way group. And everybody
Yeah,
just was supporting, going, wow, you're really good. You really write that poetry well, or I'd love to hear what you're, whatever. It was just, and it was genuine. Like it literally was
that's the
genuine.
thing. That's
Yeah, it
that
wasn't
that is
like,
the thing.
yeah, but it blew my mind. And you're going, because that's when people are sovereign, that we're all very unique. Like there's no one, who are you competing with? Like there's no one like you. There's no one like, oh, like that doesn't. And I know Mark has a lovely line he always says in the course. I really like it. He always says to people, the market isn't saturated because you're not in it. And,
Yeah.
comparing yourself to someone else doing what you're doing. It's you.
And you're only comparing yourself to the version of someone else you have in
Yeah.
your head.
Yeah. And
So
you can
it's
never
like,
be them. yeah, like I feel it's so much harder. I spent my years trying to be what I supposedly was meant to be in certain jobs, because you were sort of
Hmm. But sure, we
meant
all
to
do that.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the stress and the effort, like it's actually much easier to just be yourself,
Yeah,
isn't it? Like,
absolutely.
oh,
But
and then the
yeah.
energy.
But I suppose we grew up in an Ireland where, you know, getting a job after school was, that was a real concern that you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And you had to go, you'd be going on a boat or you'd be going on a plane to the States or whatever. So like for my generation, or like it was like you worked hard in school because if you didn't, you had no chance of ever staying in Ireland. Now that quickly changed when I was 23 or 24. Ireland went, you know,
Mm,
flick of a switch, it kind of changed. But um, so I think that's always that kind of idea at work. When I know in my early years, it was like I need to do, I'm lucky to have this job kind of thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if I have to put on a persona to keep it, well, that's what I'll do. Like,
yes, yeah.
um, I really hope, but I hope, but I also think that the younger generations are not that way inclined mentally anyway.
I hope not, but I think I was taught. I mean, the one thing I noticed, I worked with teenagers for years before 2016, before I got sick, and I mean that really got to me towards the end. I got very frustrated by it because again, I could see the same thing playing out with them. Points and CAO and courses and jobs, and oh, you see the stress on them. It was just so. You'd see this passion to do something, and then no, no, my parents won't pay for me to do that because I won't get a job, and
But
yeah,
yeah, but
like,
I have a big issue with the way the education system has gradually moved to just function as a conveyor belt into the
or
multinational sector.
exactly. That's exactly what it was, and I can see it very clearly now in the university where I was, and I can sort of see something changed in a certain year. I remember when I was there
Mm,
and it was that shift. You know, well, I believe this. I don't know now if everybody does, but I definitely believe for the time that we're in now, there was a placement of people in different industries a number of years ago to sort of help this run quite smoothly and have more agreeable, let's say, people.
okay.
And I saw that in the universe. I didn't understand it, but I could
Hmm.
see people coming in out of nowhere and being sort of groomed, and then they were up at the top, and they had a certain way about them, and
Hmm.
and it was very much the university was becoming like a business, a machine for
Well,
filling
did you see that a lot of the money coming into the university sector was from business, really, like in the
mm,
way they
yeah,
are funded. So
yeah,
I couldn't
oh
get
yeah,
over
yeah, mm,
UCG. I went in there for a walk, maybe for the first time, maybe about a year ago, but I hadn't been in there for since I left it, and I just
okay,
couldn't. It was like a city in there, or like a big town,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I was looking at the buildings, and I think a lot of that investment is coming from multinationals or the charitable foundations or however they're funding that. But it's definitely, I think it's, to your point, I think it's definitely influencing in a bad way the culture of all of the universities.
oh yeah. I mean, I could see how there was a much freer feeling to it, and a general, I don't know, a lot of those people are gone now and maybe retired, but a general love of education and arts,
Yeah.
and there was a much
But there was always
lovelier,
odd characters, and like,
yeah,
don't get me
yeah,
wrong, there was a
full of
lot,
it,
there was a lot
yeah,
in my university. There was a lot of the
yeah,
lecturers or professors. There was a definite oddness to some of them, but it was like
yeah,
that's the university sector, free
yeah.
thinking, free,
Yeah,
this kind of
well, that's
stuff.
what you think exactly, but no, that's not how it ended up. Well, that's not how I saw it. I couldn't piece it all together. All I knew I was getting very burnt out from different aspects of my life, and now I can look back and go, okay, I was being sort of yanked out of this, so I believe understand things a bit more a few years later. Because I didn't.
Hmm.
When you're in something, you can't see it. But I do
Yeah, yeah.
remember once saying to someone I was very clear on. I just couldn't understand what was happening with a particular person and a group of staff. and the particular boss, every time I just knew there's a strategy going on here and it's divide and conquer. I remember saying it to someone I worked with. I didn't even know about it before. I just,
well, let me give you an
yeah.
example of an equivalent in a different industry, but kind of broadly the same as a consulting industry. I worked in PricewaterhouseCoopers when I was 24 for 4 years, and you could see then like that was one of, you know, they were called the big five consult, you know, it was five major consultants in the world, and they had their branch in Ireland, and I was working there, and you could see it was that kind of dog eat dog to get ahead kind of mentality. And I stayed in it for maybe 4.5 years, and then I left and moved back west. But anyway, with the recession, I had to go back into the consulting industry with another company, and a different one, but in that of those five. And I could see it had become even worse in terms of they're basically taking graduates out of the third level institutions, putting them into seriously high pressured managerial positions in, you know, contracts that they'd have at 23 to 24 with no experience, no relevant experience. And it was like sink or swim. And I remember I went back and I had this young guy who was about 20, just gone 23, about a year out of college. He was my boss.
Oh my God.
And in this project. And I was looking around. It was almost like comedic. I was like, is anyone going to say something that here? Do you know, it was like, but it was just, it was just the scenario was like, and now don't get me wrong, these guys are super intelligent. They all go out and cherry pick the best people. But like if you worked in IT when I was in it the first time, they'd be hiring IT graduates or people that had an IT background. Now it was like they wanted people that they could train to manage people. It didn't matter whether they had any experience. And it was like, after I felt sorry, these kids were doing 70, 80 hours a week trying to kind of, you know, it was just kind of that kind of dog eat dog, like when you said divide and conquer, it was very much that. It was like, here you are, there's 10 of you. Probably in 3 years' time, only 3 of you are going to be here. And it's not going to be us firing us. You're going to know, we're going to make you feel so bad about yourself in the meantime. We're not even going to have to fire you. You'll be gone. You know, you'll leave yourself. That was very much the kind of that. Well, that's how I felt about it anyway. But But, and again, like a lot of these companies nowadays are doing psychometric testing before they hire anyone at all. Like, it's like they know they're looking for the personality traits that they can mold, that are very kind of malleable, but that are be malleable to that kind of thing. So
Oh, very. It's very interesting, and I'm only seeing it now. It's like in hindsight, because before I left, I was so frustrated. I applied for loads of different jobs, and heard the jobs, and I didn't really want any of them, but I still applied for them. But I knew, I can look back now and go, no, I wasn't successful in them, but I knew I wouldn't be at that stage because my heart wasn't in it. But aside from that, I wasn't political enough, or I wasn't malleable. Maybe I could see through. I don't know. I think that's the difference. There's sort of like, it sounds maybe a bit dramatic, but like, are you someone who's willing to almost sell your soul for on some level for whatever comes next? An element, I'm not saying sell your soul, but there has to be a certain amount of
I'd phrase it like this: is they recognize the people who make the compromises before those people recognize it themselves. That's the sad thing. It's like seeing a weakness in somebody and exploiting it, and they're kind of helpless to that weakness. And everybody's culpable, or to their own downfall or whatever. But I do think that it is at a stage now where they kind of nearly know the tick you have that they recognize and saying, like, we can exploit that, and they don't give a shit, like, whether how that works out for you long term. Do you know?
No, it's interesting how we may not be where we are now only for what's gone for many years. Even you can look back at all the and the education system and whatever, everybody's different views, and I wouldn't have huge.
I would have been a fan up until, like, to be honest, I was as blind as everybody else up until maybe 4 years or 5 years ago. I would have been a champ, like, I probably would have been a cheerleader for the multinational sector 5 years ago. And I just didn't pay any attention. I really didn't pay too much attention. It's only in the last 4 or 5 years you kind of see, I saw the culture changing, and this kind of idea of not being able to, to having inputs into your life outside of work, and that kind of thing. So
they would have an input.
Well, in terms of social culture, in terms of just very gentle stuff, but kind of at the same time, it's like, look, I want to leave here at 4:30 and forget about you till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, kind of thing. But anyway.
Yeah, and sorry, the only other, we'll go
I want to steer it back to your book, because
we're
throw it up there again.
I'll throw up my one copy until the others arrive.
Gifts from the devastation. So what's your preferred method for people to buy that? Is there one?
Look, I'm not going to. I suppose it depends on if you're interested in an audiobook or in a print or ebook, and I mean, that's so the individual,
And what's the best way to if somebody wants to purchase this?
What I might, if I don't, I don't know if you want to buy the audiobook, you can go straight. The best way in terms of is you can go into my website, CelineO'Donovan.com. I was going to suggest, if you can put up underneath the video, I have a link tree. Link tree, and I think Linktree is the easiest, because you'll see there you can get on my mailing list. There's a link to buy the audiobook. There's a link to buy the print book. It's very straightforward. As I said, the audiobook is
Can you send me the link, and I'll put it into the bottom of this as well? Any other links you have as well.
I'll put okay, and I have a YouTube channel. So I'd say to anyone as well, it's again, if they're interested and want to be on my mailing list, I send out, if I'm
absolutely. How do you get on? How do you get on?
I have a link as well. It's on my link tree. So basically, if you went into my YouTube channel, I know there's all these different ways. It's trying to sort of cohesively bring them together. So Linktree seems to be the easiest way to sort of give people the options depending on what it is they want. Somebody might just want to buy the book. But I hope, I've also a number of reviews. I had quite a number of people read the book in advance publications. So just way back before I'd even published, Sarah McInerney, the RT broadcaster and journalist, Tony O'Gregan, the coach, the hurler, former hurler.
Tony O'Gregan.
And then Dillish Clare, who's a doctor and herbalist. But since then, I've had quite a few people, and then the journalist, actually, Lachlan, who I'm a big fan of.
I saw her on Mark's channel recently.
Yeah, I got I don't say get them together, but I connected with her. So this is this is how this community works. I was following her on Instagram at the very beginning, and I really, really admired it. Finally, a journalist speaking out, for free speech and a bit of discussion and debate, and you think would be normal, but and I really admired her. So I followed her until she was banned on Instagram, and then I stayed in touch with her, and she gave me her email, and I had mentioned it to Mark, so he had said, so I sent her an email, and I said, just introduce them, and then they got together and did a nice show.
You're the brains behind that.
The setter up, or I don't know, but it just shows. It just show we don't.
Just shows,
this is the way I think.
This is the point. That was the point I was trying to make down on Dool, and I didn't get it across right. Is you often the person you need isn't the person you're talking to, but the person you're talking to knows the person you need. Do you know what I mean?
No, you did make the point. No, you did make it very well. No, it's very true. And I think everybody there is like that. You know what I mean? I get that sense. There's always people, I found that, that are very, I think it's that knowing that, the community or the world that we're going to live in, if you know, if it's going to function well, we all have to be functioning at our best and living, you know, as our fullest, whatever that is, whether you're a writer, a gardener, a farmer, it doesn't matter. But we all benefit if we all live in that way. You know, everybody benefits. I benefit if you're writing really good material that I can read, or whatever, someone else is making something that I really enjoy. Like that's, I think that's where everybody, that's why it's so easy. It's a very easy, natural way of doing things, because everybody I met anyways, that's where they seem to be coming from. And I think then creative, it's work, but it's not the work that you would have.
No.
Different type of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's no, that's interesting that it was you that kind of figured that out. Because you think she's an interesting character, like, because she was, you know, in Irish terms, she was, you know, she's up there to get shot. You know, plenty of people would be queuing up to shoot her down, like, you know.
Yeah, she doesn't care though.
Yeah.
And
no,
you know,
that's sort of.
Yeah, and wasn't that the question that was asked at the beginning of the weekend? You know, what is it? Why is it that some people are like that, and then why is it that other people are, you know, not?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not a right or wrong. You know, I'm learning that now everybody has to make their own choices, and that's fine. But it's just interesting. People like what? That's why. Sorry, when you mentioned the education system there and the university, and all I remember, I was going out to schools all the time, talking to students about going to college, and everybody kept telling us, "Oh, just make sure to tell them it's all about critical thinking. It's not like secondary school. It's not rote learning. It's critical thinking. We want them to question everything." And I just thought, it's sort of so ironic now, like, you know, what happened to all of that? Where did that go?
Such
out the window.
Like, yeah.
Critical thinking, question everything, come to your own conclusions. Don't, you know, you write a thesis or you do a PhD, you're supposed to, you know, look at everything else that has been done and everything that's been considered and bring your unique perspective to it. And that seems to have totally gone out the window, isn't it?
I think that
questioning
nobody. Well, I always try to look on the brightest possible reason that happened, in terms of given not being too negative on the other side. And I wonder, I think sometimes I wonder, is it just that a confluence of money came into the system gradually over time, and we had this multinational sector, and it seemed like a good idea that we should start tailoring our education system to keep that sector happy. And nobody really understood how damaging that was going to be over a short period, you know, even over 5 or 10 years, like to the point of critical thinking. I remember when I was in university, we used to be getting dragged out of the canteen twice a week to go on some sort of a daft protest march somewhere, do you know? And whatever you were protesting about, I can't, you know, usually grants or college accommodation, whatever it might be. But there was always something, there was always the sense to rebel against authority. And now it seems like we're producing kids that are just champions for authoritarianism. I can't quite get my head around it. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, and I don't think I really don't, I know it sounds terrible, I don't believe that it's an accident. I really don't. I think
you don't think it's an accident?
No. And I'm not being, I'm very optimistic about the future. I really am. I have no doubt, because I know it's up to us. So it is up to us. And there's enough people. It doesn't take as many people, you know, like this, who are full of hope and optimism and light. You know, you don't need a high percentage to start the ball rolling. You just need a small group. And, you know, it's all about...
as long as it's small and cohesive, it should work. Yeah.
And it's about, and the fact that there's joy in it. Like, there was great joy at the weekend. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that's what
there was.
And we all needed it, and we had great fun, and we had great connections. And I mean, if it wasn't joyful, nothing will come of it. And I think everybody, there's just a beautiful, something beautiful was born there, definitely.
Yeah,
and we're still only a couple of weeks since, and I've had a few connections with people already through it. So, you know, who knows? Yeah, it's up to us. But
Well,
whatever was planned or not planned, it ain't happening because we're creating something better.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
We're creating something anyway.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm just looking at the clock here. We're just at the 90-minute mark, and as always, when talking to you, if time flies by. Notwithstanding 3 or 4 times getting thrown out. There's apologies for that. I'll hopefully be able to tidy that up on the back end here. So I suppose we might leave it at that, Celine. Is there anything else you wanted to say, or anything you wanted to promote, basically?
I think it's really the book. I'm also, I suppose I should say, I trained as a life coach, but really what I want to do, so I haven't been actively doing that because I've been so busy writing, but how I really see that maybe developing is more, I'd like to work more rather than as a coach, as a guide. I like to work with people who've maybe been through something like cancer. I'm starting in that sort of exploring that. So if there is anyone who is struggling right now, or maybe wants to talk through with someone, whatever they're going through, cancer or something like that, I'm very happy to do that. And I think just in terms of reading the book, as I said, towards the end, there's a lot of really practical tools, because, we talked about a lot of things here, and we hear all these lovely words about, going within and taking your power back. And maybe it's like, yeah, but what? But, so, it can all sound a bit out there and a bit airy-fairy, but there's a lot of very practical tools here. My big thing, as I said to you earlier, because I didn't know myself, and my easiest way of describing how you start coming back to taking your power back is you get help and you work through clearing your trauma, your pain, whatever. It's hard work, but you start doing it and you really, really free yourself up to do so much more. And you got to come back into your body. This is the one thing to go, what do you mean come back into your body? Yet that's it. You have to come back in and feel everything, because that's basically how you create. You have to come in, and that's how you hear your intuition. Like we talked about there, the energy of relationships. That's how you feel. Is this right or wrong? I only make decisions from that place now. I don't make nothing else. I may do a bit of research and I may talk to people, but it's very stress-free now. I can just go within and go, no, that doesn't resonate with me. I won't be doing it. No, nothing wrong with it, but it's not for me. And I will be doing it. It's all very, very simple. Life becomes it's not that complicated. It is all energy, but you have to be in your body and grounded, and you got to feel everything. And anyways, that's just my tuppence worth, because that's how the only way I wouldn't be writing only for that, because I couldn't hear anything. I never wrote a thing in my life because I had so much stress in my body. I was just survival mode all the time, and my mind racing. It was just, and I'm sure a lot of people could be feeling that right now. So there is a way out of that. And I hope this helps. I hope it helps. That's the whole reason I wrote it.
Well, thanks a million, Celine, for taking the time with me today. And I would highly recommend to anyone that watches this, I'm sure 15 million people are going to watch this broadcast to get to the end.
Might watch the beginning,
I might have to cut that into the beginning.
Maybe. Take a chunk out there, a few things maybe. I hope no former employers are watching.
Yeah, I will.
Be careful.
Good luck to them.
I don't care. I have nothing to lose. Maybe coming after me, I don't think.
That's fair enough. All right, so Celine, we'll leave it at that.
Really appreciate
no, thanks you. Thanks yourself. Because I know
really enjoyed it.
We'll be chatting.
I'll send you on the link.
Yeah, send on all the links.
Sunday, anyways. I'm going to go out.
Yeah. You're going to go to Gort.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'd like to. Haven't been out there before. So
good stuff. All right, we'll see you then.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, bye. Bye.